So this is the third part of the dream, and then the last part of the video, where I'll talk about what happened at the end of the dream, and then talk about a few scenarios that would, you could say, entail the Lord working in mysterious ways. So after the the judgment, which I consider was like a wave of the judgment, um, after the woman has been her body has been dragged off the boat and her blood has been cleaned, wiped off. There were people who emerged from below the deck, it seemed, and I was trying to explain to the people about the judgment and the fact that even though they were scared, they had no reason to be scared, and to explain some other things to them. But whilst I was doing that, somebody else was talking to the people, like competing with me in loudness of speech, right? So that the people would not listen to me. And I felt bothered by this, right? So the way I see it is this: there are people who are going to try to extinguish your light by whatever arguments they might come up with. And I explained before in the beginning, it's not like you're judging people. Sometimes I like to think about it this way: instead of thinking that, oh, these people are still asleep, how could you believe these things, how could you go to club, how could you this, just think of it like you've graduated past that, because there was a time when you were also asleep, there was a time when you were also doing some things, but you've graduated past that. So it's not like you're better than them or they're better than you, except maybe one dies a believer, the other dies a disbeliever. It may be that the Lord might guide them later, right? Just like He guided you to what you believe He has guided you to. Um, but as far as you're concerned, you've just graduated above that. You're no longer in that seeking those things, and you like that, and that's good for you. You hope they too will be graduated to another level, right? So it's like a class, right? So don't think of it like you have to judge them or feel. And sometimes because we're trying so hard to be righteous, we have within our subconscious anger towards those who are just going about, not even trying, or we feel like they're not trying. And we feel like, like the Lord should give us better than He gives them, because why is, we're trying so hard. So sometimes we have that resentment, but we should change some of those ways we think, I think. We should try, right? So for me, it's like there are people who are going to try to extinguish your light. Even when I was talking about the disbelievers in the ninth chapter of the Quran, the Surah Tawbah, the hypocrites will tell the believers, like, why are you going out in the sun? Stay with us in the village. Don't go out and call people to Islam. Stay here. Why bother yourself that much? Because they want to frustrate your mission. And I think within us, we have a tendency, maybe because of our past life, because of our highest self, we have a tendency to think we're good. But instead of trying to be good and accepting that we're not good right now because we've come to the world as a defiled spirit, we try to bring others down instead. So that way we can convince ourselves that we are not as bad, like those people are worse. So if somebody is trying to do good, we think maybe we should bring them down a little bit, because I mean, look at them. Why do they think they're better than us? Who do they think they are? But if everybody's doing evil, then you feel more comfortable in the fact that you're not striving towards your Lord. You understand? So you see what I'm saying? So people are going to try to extinguish your light. But think about it this way: the people who care, who want to be guided, they would listen to your speech. Those people, they're choosing to listen to the other person. So sometimes you would be in a conversation and maybe you're trying to explain a particular scripture to somebody, and then all of a sudden somebody starts talking above you about something that's not even of consequence. But guess what? Sometimes the people know what you wanted to talk about, but they're not interested. And it's not for you to tell people what to be interested in. They're just not interested. And in fact, some of them take it as a relief that somebody else has come up with some other topic they can laugh about, right? So you have to think about it like this: you just doing God's work. It is for the Lord to guide whom He wills. You're not going to cause to believe whom you will. The Lord makes believe, and they say in the Quran says it is not for a soul to believe except by permission of its Lord. So people will seek what they believe is meaningful for them, is fulfilling to their life, to their being. If they don't believe guidance is fulfilling to them, you're just causing noise for them, right? So the Lord will test the people, it will separate the people, so that even though you're speaking, they will choose not to listen to you. So even though your anger is towards the person who is opposing you the most, because you're thinking if he's not doing that, the people will be guided. So it's his fault the people are not guided. But instead, I think it's this way. The Lord is giving the people the options to see which ones they would gravitate towards. And some of the people don't want to gravitate towards guidance. They want to gravitate towards something about laughing and joking and not knowing anything spiritual. And that's okay too, right? It's like sometimes some people are just happy to just go into the hereafter without being punished. They don't care about achieving the highest ranks. They don't care about those things. They've not been awakened to that possibility. They've not been awakened to strive towards that. And some of us were like that before too. So some of those people, it's not like they would remain like that forever, but the Lord is separating the people who would gravitate towards what, who would choose a different option because they have free will. So they have to have choices as well, right? So don't think about it as, oh, this is the person who is the evil one. No, the Lord is using both of you to give the people choices, and he will guide whom he wills. So you just do your part. Maybe there will be somebody there who will be listening to you, and even after all the joking, he will come back and say, you wanted to say something, and he started saying something I found interesting. What was that? It might just be one out of 1,000 people. And not everybody is going to be priests, as they say, right? Not everybody is going to be teachers in the religion, role models and leaders in the religion. So that's okay too. So that's that aspect of the person who was trying to speak above me so that I don't explain to the people certain things. Then there's also the aspect of the people who were coming from below the deck. I take it like this. The people on the deck, some of them are secure. Maybe they once striving for the Lord, calling people, they're secure. But there are others who are about to face judgment. Some of them, immediately the judgment starts, they get taken away. Some of them, they will fulfill a time until maybe, I want to call it a wave of that judgment comes to an end. Then they will face their judgment like the woman. And then there are other people whose time has not come for judgment yet. So I see it like this. There are people who have this influence in society, leaders, ministers, priests, community leaders, right? They have influence upon the people, even some parents, so that even though the people might be guided, but because of these influences, it's more difficult for them to be guided because of these corrupt influences, because of these people that make righteousness difficult. When you want to go for a job, they tell you, oh, you can't wear your hijab. When oh, you have to be like this, you have to be like that. When those people get taken away, then another group of people might come into the fold of the religion, into the fold of Islam. And then maybe the Lord will also separate those people and send another wave of judgment, right? Until the lifestyle becomes one of an Islamic lifestyle, one of good character, one of justice, right? And then you will still have evil people, but by then their evil will not be widespread in the society. The evil will not be a culture, a way of life in the society. Good will thrive. Evil will just be people doing evil here and there, maybe in secret, and that's okay. We are human beings, but it doesn't influence the fabric of society. It doesn't change the nature in which the Lord created things. So, yes, the Lord will judge them individually, but the nation itself will not be judged. But a group of people, a nation, so to speak, will be judged as long as their lifestyle keeps being evil. And then they will keep separating the people and waves of judgment. First group get taken away so that maybe others can, those that influence them are taken away so maybe they can come into the religion. And then maybe there are other group of people in that second wave that also need to be taken away, right? And then within the people who remain also, you will find some who are eager to strive for the best, the highest goal, to be synchronized, so to speak, with their highest self, their highest spiritual self. I look at it this way: we were created before we came into the existence of the universe. Then I also look at it like there are seven heavens, and we've had an existence in each heaven. When I say we've had, I'm thinking about the past, but you shouldn't think about time in that way. It might be it's happening at the same time, right? You forget about time relationship. So past, present, that's just our construct for right now to understand certain things. So you might have an existence in the other heavens, and maybe those existences, their translation, it's translated in every heaven below that. What the highest heaven, your existence is translated to something in the heaven below it. And the lowest heaven and this earth that we are in, maybe those existences, they have translation within your subconscious. And they say in the Bible that the Lord said his spirit will not dwell with man anymore because he's flesh, but it will dwell with man, I think, 120 years, right? I think about this. A baby, they say when a baby is born, the third eye, the eye of certainty also, is opened for 13 days. So if you think about it, it's like after 12 days, then it's closed. So maybe for the baby, 12 days is like 120 years in the spiritual because of the frequency that their brain operates at. So they tell you that in a narration, the prophet said, when the Lord created the heavens and the earth, the days and the months have now come synchronized to the beginning as he created them. So there was movement, and maybe now there is rest in the heavens. So it's possible that some of those people who lived 1,000 years, like in those days, their subconscious, because the earth was still, the heavens were still expanding, there was still movement. It doesn't mean that because they lived that long, they had thousands of years of experience in the spiritual. But it may mean that even though we are living 30 years, 40 years, we are experiencing thousands and thousands of years of knowledge and experience in the heavens. Just like a child will go through 12 days and experience 120 years. That's how I want to think about it, right? It's just something that's interesting to me that, sounds good at least. Well, when I wonder about it, when I imagine it. So it may be that you're living upon this earth, and if you seek the spiritual, a time might come when you might be, as they say, resurrected, given life, so that you become one, you become whole, you're no longer divided. So you're in sync with all yourselves, your highest self and your lowest self. Everything has become one, right? And that's, I think, is when you realize who you are. You remember your name, you're redeemed, you become one with the Lord. So if you think about it that way, right? It's also like um, you can also say, oh, the Messiah has had so many years of experience, and I believe he's going to be taught the names of all things because he had come, then he went away for like 2,000 years, right? So even though we live in 100 years, which is translated to thousands and thousands of years in the spiritual, 2,000 years is even longer than that, right? In the spiritual, that's just, it sounds interesting to me. Of course, this might be way wrong, right? So that's just one random thing, I guess. But it's like, yeah, so you will have people, they're religious, but they don't seek the highest. The Lord has not awakened them to that, to guide them to that. So it's fine. They just want to be in the community. They have their own role. They just don't want to be punished in the hereafter. Whereas there are others who want to seek the highest. They want to love the Lord with all their hearts, you know. And I think about it this way also. I believe some experiences we have in life, we think about it and we say, this ought to be another way. For example, I love this person so much. Imagine if I was a ruler and this person did wrong. Would I be able to punish this person? Now, what does that mean? Have I loved this person more than the Lord? Now you have to think to yourself, I should be able to love the Lord more than anything upon the earth, more than anything He created, more than myself. So seek that from your Lord. You see, so your experience in the life has now taught you to reason out logically and say, I ought to seek from my Lord that I love Him above all things and that I fear Him and none else, right? And they say that's the highest commandment. So why don't you pray for it? Why don't you seek it? Right? So sometimes we have these experiences in life that should point us to how things should be. We're like, okay, I feel this way for somebody, but maybe I ought to feel this way for the Lord. So why don't I seek that? So there are people who would seek that, who would think, who would reason out and be like, okay, this may not be the nature that the Lord has created things. Maybe it ought to be another way. Who, when they get knowledge, they want to share it. They're like, this is so beautiful. But there are others who don't care. They just want to go about, they have their jobs, they have their families, they can play, they can laugh. And that's fine for them. That's fulfilling to their souls. Right? We all have different paths. So not everybody, I believe, will come in sync with their highest self, but that's what we should seek. So, like I said, that's, I guess, related, but one random thing. So, and also, like I said, I was going to talk a little bit about the Lord working in mysterious ways. So, with my experience, and like I said, sometimes I have an experience, and it doesn't mean I've interpreted the experience correctly, but at least it has led me to a possibility of how some things might work in the spiritual or even in the underworld. So I think of situations like, okay, I'll start this one with a dream I had. I was with traveling with a companion, and I didn't want to waste his time, but I wanted to reminisce. I wanted to go back to some of the places I had visited in the past before continuing our journey. But I didn't want to waste his time. But whilst I was thinking that, we started on the journey anyway. And then on our way, we we came across some people. They were maybe sitting by their house, but they kept covering their faces, right, with their garments. And then later, when I was relating the dream to the person, I remembered that there's a story like that with Noah, the prophet Noah, when he was calling the people to guidance, and the people didn't want to listen to him. So when they passed by Noah, they'll cover their faces with their garments. But I think there were also some people who looked a little bit faceless. I can't remember for sure. It's been a while. I don't usually write my dreams down. So we passed those people, and then um, we came across some children. They were playing in like a playground. You know, sometimes the playgrounds they have this fence around, so they were within that and they were playing. But it was dark. It was at night, I think. And I was wondering, why are these children left out to play at night? Where are their parents? Why are the parents not calling them inside? They just left alone playing like this at night. So anyway, we passed the children and we continued. And we came to a house which seemed to be at the end of the road. And in the house, I could see myself in the house. And there were other people as well. We were sitting on a table. And my mom was, I think she was serving food. She was standing whilst we were sitting, but I could see myself. So I was amazed. And I thought maybe I would wave and they could see me, right? So I started tapping the glass. Then I started realizing maybe I've come to the past and maybe they're not supposed to see me. Then I told my companion, the one I was traveling with, I'm like, we've come to the past. We need to run back. We need to go back to where we came from. Then we started fleeing. We started running. I don't know if it was because of the fear that came upon me whilst we started fleeing. Then I noticed there were two people in a vehicle. The man was driving and there was a woman. In my mind, it was a witch and they were chasing us, right? So we fled. We were fleeing. But then it's like the man was no more, the vehicle was no more. The woman started us chasing us by foot, right? We were fleeing from the past anyway, but the woman started chasing us by foot. And then I started thinking, because sometimes I have dreams wherein I'm running, but I had told myself that whenever I'm running, to know that it's a dream because I shouldn't be running. So I told myself, no, this is a dream. Why am I running? I've told myself I shouldn't be running. But then I looked onto to the ground, and it was what you would consider like a vivid dream, right? Everything looked real. There were like leaves on the ground, so I assumed it was fall time. You know, like if you're in the states, because I lived in the states for a while. So there were leaves on the ground, and I was like, this is real. I'm stepping on leaves. I believe they were making sounds and everything. So I'm like, no, this is not a dream. So I continued fleeing. But the woman was closing in, was closing in, right? So we couldn't run further. So in a way, I was telling my friend maybe we should stop and fight her. You know, he was a little bit ahead of me, but she had already reached me. So I had to stop, and then there was nothing to do. So I just punched her. I punched her really hard. In fact, when I punched her, whilst I punched my bed, so my hand was hurting for like a week. Like, it was sore, but it woke me up. And then, but when I woke up, I felt like it was so. It was like an awesome dream. I felt like it was like a training session, and I had interpreted that dream as like a witch, and maybe the man is the devil of the witch, right? And for after a while, the devil died or whatever, and the woman kept chasing. But you have to think of things like this, right? What a dream might have one interpretation in one heaven. I want to think about it that way, but it might have another interpretation in another heaven. So I'm going to give you an example. This is not how things are, it's just an example. Take the son of Adam, for example, because I believe the Messiah was born in heaven before the fall, right? Because of some other scriptures. I had spoken about this in the past. So it's possible that after his birth, that was when they ate from the fruit, when Satan came and tempted them about eternity and about genetic modification, which caused death to live within them, right? But if he was a child, a baby, this may not have been his conscious choice, right? This was his parents' choice. So let's say, for example, because they ate from the tree and now death lives within them, so now they couldn't access 100% of their brain, of their spirit. Now, Satan could cause them to forget certain things, like we came to earth and we forgot who we are, right? And then he could make the child appear as a serpent whilst he appears as the child, right? So now the child becomes hated, and the child maybe would wonder why he's hated, but he doesn't realize that he appears as a serpent whilst the serpent appears as he appears. And then the devil has caused them to forget, so they don't remember what had happened. So in one reality, the son might be represented in the system as one thing, but in another reality, he might be represented as a serpent, right? But if you always think a serpent is a bad thing, then when they tell you about something without knowing what reality they're speaking of and how things manifest in that reality, you think you know everything, right? You assume serpent is bad, so how can it be a serpent? How can the Messiah be a serpent? Just an idea. So it's possible that yes, in one realm, the woman is a witch. Just like, for example, Eve was pure, Eve, but then, because in Arabic she's called Hawa. So, but then if she ate from the tree, she would have been defiled. Just like you would think of Mary Magdalene, whom they would say the spirit of Lilith possessed her. So she was defiled. So in one aspect, she's Lilith. In another aspect, she has become pure, right? So that's just examples. So it's possible the woman is a witch that was pursuing me, but it's also possible she's actually my past that I'm running away from, but I don't know I'm running away from it, right? And I was watching a movie or TV show one time, and somebody said you can run from everything except your past. And then this dream came to my mind, and I guess I started interpreting it differently, like this. So maybe that woman was actually my spirit, my eternal bride, the one that makes me whole, right? We're one and the same, basically. But in one realm, she's female. In another realm, I'm male. Whatever. So, um, so at what you might be in a certain point in your life, and that dream, the Lord might give you a key to that dream so that you understand what you're going through by that experience. And then you might go to another experience, and the Lord might teach you an even different interpretation of that same thing, right? And maybe none of them is correct. Maybe both of them are correct. Maybe one of them is correct, right? But now, so I mean, that's just an interesting dream. That one has its interpretations and other things. But there's also the aspect of, think about it this way. I had another dream wherein there were snakes, right? They were all around me, and I was kind of scared. But it's almost like there was somebody by me who I assumed was like an angel. So it's like he was showing me that we giving them like something that looks like them, like a snake, like a lizard, but different from them. So now they gathered against that thing, right? They were scattered all around me, but now they've gathered themselves to that purpose. This other reptile that doesn't look like them, they're gonna feed on it. Once they gathered, then we started chopping up off the heads of the snakes. So it's like we gathered them, right? Whilst they thought they were trapping this other snake, this other reptile, the lizard, so they could eat it. In fact, the trap was laid that they laid was for themselves. So sometimes evil lays a trap for you, but in fact the trap is for themselves, right? So you might be, for example, somebody, maybe it's not even because they hate you, maybe it's because of hatred they have towards somebody that loves you, maybe your parents, maybe your wife, maybe your husband, but they decide to hurt you instead of hurting the person directly. So they hurt the person through you. So it might be that there's one person who is practicing black magic against you and witchcraft against you. And then another person is practicing it for a different reason. Maybe they feel like you have a certain luck, a certain star, a certain lucky star that they want, a certain light. And then there's another person. And then this is affecting you, and you don't know why the Lord is doing all these things to you. But maybe the Lord is trapping them. So one day they might become, one of them might want to claim you, and the other might be like, no, I have more rights to this. And guess what? They fight against themselves. And sometimes I feel like the Lord delays his judgment because he doesn't want to expose people as sinful because they might repent. Even you were sinful at one point, right? So sometimes he delays it so that maybe he can forgive the person. But I believe that that's why sometimes he might show us glimpses. But it doesn't mean like, okay, the person we see in the dream, he's the evil one. But maybe he's the evil one, you never know. But if the Lord had willed, he would have given us power over them and we would have destroyed them. But I feel like he holds back. He protects us whilst we do not know because he still wants those people. He loves those people. It's not like he created them. It's like your mom. She might have a bad child, but she still loves that child and hopes the child becomes good. So you, as a believer, you've sold your life of this world to the Lord to do as he please. You've dedicated your life to the Lord. So the Lord can use you, take you through certain things that these people might put you through. Meanwhile, he can try to guide them. And if they've decided they don't seek guidance and then he judges them, then I believe that's what happens when we become enlightened and the Lord gives us authority so that we know the scripture. We know how to attack the evil ones. We know how to remove the demons, right? Because now the Lord has put the power in our hands, right? It's like certain doors have been closed, certain doors of mercy have been closed. There has been judgment has come upon some people, right? So sometimes just be, look to the Lord that He might not show you exactly what you're going through at the time, but seek from Him that He guides your heart when He takes you through some of these trials, right? So sometimes there are things happening in our lives that make us that it's like it opens as our mind, it makes our mind resonate to where it needs to resonate so that we can access certain information where we need to access that information. So even if I'm talking about this dream where I went back to the past, for some reason I've been thinking about warp speed, which is like jumping dimension, if you think about it, if you think about Star Trek and Star Wars. But also it's like bending space and time, so you don't have to travel the whole distance. You can travel a long distance in a short time because now you're bending space upon itself, right? You're jumping dimensions. And again, it's like I was listening to Jonathan Clegg, and he was talking about ringing a bell, and the bell would sound all the way to the Garden of Eden. Now, it may be that yes, the Lord is guiding him to some things, or he's getting information from the pit, because I believe sometimes we access both information, but sometimes we think it's one and the same, right? And whatever the disbelievers do at the end of the day is God's plan. So something happened recently. I'm not going to say what happened, because sometimes when you give names, you tend to look at those people as if they're bad. But in fact, it's not that they're bad, but maybe the system is using them for the ritual. But I also believe that the bell has been sounded, right? It's like they're about to open the portal, they're about to create the black hole, they're about to jump space, they're about to reverse time, something like that. I don't know what it means in reality, right? But even the dream I had wherein I was running back, I went back in time and then I was running back and then time caught up with me. So I feel like, and if I think about it, it was like in the fall, right? And also the dream about the full moons and the judgment. And then there was this Pastor Dana who recently was talking about his dreams and November. So it's possible that there's a time, and maybe the 4 moons are 4 months, and you can say from July to November is 4 months. I look at things from the Islamic calendar. So that's why sometimes when people say, how old are you? I say 32. But in fact, I consider myself 33, because I'm 32 by the solar calendar, but I don't want to recognize the calendar of the sun worshippers, right? But I also don't want to confuse people who know my birth date and they're wondering, why are you saying you're 33? You know, you're 32, whatever. But so it may be that there are 4 months that are significant, right? And it may be that the fall is when the time catches up with us based on that dream. It might mean something else totally different, right? But I believe they're trying to tear the veil, right? So that those evil ones can come into our dimension without much effort. Because right now, I think the powerful ones can come into our dimension, can take the shape of what they will, or they would rather take the possess clones, right? So maybe that's the time of the of our known resurrection, the time of we are given life, the time we remember, right? So it's maybe that time is during the fall time in in the northern hemisphere. There's this song by I can't remember his name, but the song is called Starboy, and he says in the song, "I come alive in the fall time." So it may be that, whether these people are working for demons knowingly or the system is just using them, but it may be that their false messiah is actually telling you he comes alive in the fall time, whether it's this year or some other year. I mean, it doesn't mean he would manifest come out in the open, but maybe that's when he comes alive and works behind the scenes. So maybe that's the time they tear the veil, and that's the time that we start to remember, and maybe that remembrance might benefit some of us, or maybe might not benefit others of us. So sometimes we get these keys, I want to call them, and then the Lord gives us insights into certain aspects. So, for example, the dream I had recently, wherein I was in the ship and the storm and all that, we are experiencing the rainy season in Africa, in Sierra Leone right now, and recently it's been raining really hard. So during the time I had the dream, I believe it was raining really hard outside. So it's possible that it caused my brain to resonate with a storm, as you would have a storm, so that it would be easy for me to access that dream. So sometimes I believe the Lord puts things along our paths. They're like road signs. They're like keys that open up doors to certain consciousnesses, to certain insights. And sometimes also, I believe, for example, in case of dreams, I believe there are different types of dreams. In some dreams, it's a short dream. For example, the dream I had wherein there were dark clouds that were gathering. Right, I might talk about that a little bit later. But sometimes the dreams are a little bit longer, not too long, short scenes, but you know, a dream with many scenes instead of just one scene, no dialogue, just some image, right? So I believe and sometimes the dreams, their interpretation is direct, but sometimes I believe the Lord might give you another dream which might come true like almost immediately, and then maybe you can use that dream to unlock a similar type of dream you had recently. So maybe the Lord is teaching us certain things. There are a lot of tangents and a lot of things I wanted to talk about. I hope I don't leave some of them out, but if I do, I mean, you know. So even the talking about the storm, right? You know, um, I've been also listening to Christians, and they also talk about the day of the dark cloud, right? I mean, it's not quite the same thing. I've talked about the storms before in my other video. I think I labeled it "Good News," the storm. Um, but it's like I think about it this way: the fruits are like the words of the Lord, and you prepare the land, right? And then the Lord gives you these inspirations. They're like the wind. They come and go in waves, and they gather the clouds. They gather the source of life so that it can have water. And then the Lord can direct it to the land that you've prepared, your heart, your soul, so that where there was death, there can be life once more. And you can bear fruits, right? And so and they say for example, the example of the believers is like a tree whose fruits benefits the sower. And they said the word of the Lord is the highest word, right? So it's like a high fruit. So in a way, the Lord is blessing us with his words that are within us. They are seeds that are being planted. And every now and then he sends his inspiration, until when the time comes when he has gathered the clouds, the storm, right? Which might manifest in one reality as one thing, but within your soul it might manifest as something you consider bad, but in fact, like dark days, right? You're getting a little bit of glimpses of light when there is lightning, and there is storm. That storm might ruin some people, but in other people, it might be a calm rain that would just make the fruits grow in the best form, they would flourish really well, right? So then, when the seasons come, if it's not like just if it's like a tree, then it takes time to grow, right? And then it bears the fruits, which are the words of your Lord that you become one with. You become that good fruit. So, you know, going back, talking about death and life, as we talk about the Lord extracting life from the dead, because I believe when we ate from the tree and we all lived within Adam during that time, death lives within us, right? But when they give the mark of the beast, they change your DNA. I think then death becomes even manifest within you, right? I was talking about demon possession, talking about alcohol demon and different ways of understanding demon possession. We tend to think it's just the way the movies are with the movie The Exorcist, right? But sometimes I think demon possession is like they say we all have a devil companion. It's like when an artificial intelligence mimics a behavior so that you don't know it's not a human being. So the devils can take your mind, which is like clay, you know, it has networks, it has an image, and take a certain aspect of your mind that they can shape an image of, that image they can take that image. So when they possess that image, they can influence your mind at a level that you cannot differentiate whether it's you or the demon, so that it reaches a point when your soul becomes like that as well, right? So I believe that's how some of the possessions are. So it's not like something you would notice really right away. But I believe it's a lot worse. For example, when people take the mark of the beast, Christians believe once you take it, that's it. It's possible. But I also tend to believe something else. Well, I think something else. I don't know if I believe it, right? But they believe once you take it, it's done. You're sealed, right? But I believe, for example, when somebody takes that mark, they change their DNA, it becomes different. It's like they're very much alive, they're very much conscious, aware of what's going on, but they can't control it. It's like something else has taken over their mind. They're like a prisoner. And it's like I believe it's like a worse fate that imagine living like that for one day. If you're freed from that, you wouldn't want to go back. Now imagine people go through that for months and years, wherein They're aware things are happening. And imagine some of these demons, right? Some of the things that are normal to them. You can think of some of the things, even you might be filthy in some aspects, but so maybe something you're not even thinking about. That's what these demons have been doing. And now if they have your mind and you have their memories, imagine putting your mind through some of the things they've done. Think about a traumatic experience, like people who go to war and come back, right? So imagine going through that for a year or months. But I believe it's possible that, yeah, maybe your fate is sealed, but it's possible also that the Messiah, who is supposed to be the Redeemer by the Lord's permission, would be granted that power over death, so that you can be given life once more. You can be reversed. Your DNA can be reversed. He can remove the demons, right? But it would not be for everybody who had taken the mark. It would be maybe for a few people who the Lord. But I mean, you should not depend on just that, because, like I said, even one day being in that situation is torture in itself. And then imagine even living that situation, and then your mind has to go through all that trauma to cure itself. Imagine somebody who was raped. Sometimes the person will tell you that when the experience started, it's like they left their body, right? It's like they died. Imagine you're going through an experience where you can't leave your body. You have to be very much aware of what's going on, but it's a very traumatic experience. And now imagine you're going through that and you can't help it because you can't control your actions. You want to commit suicide, but you can't even do that, right? And now imagine even if that demon is removed and you have to go through some of those memories. If the Lord doesn't spare you, you will go crazy. So these are just speculations, obviously, right? Um, but maybe I can end it here and then maybe look at a few verses from the Quran and close this video. Um, so it's like they say, the Lord works in mysterious ways, right? So try to seek your Lord, and then in anything you do, try to rely upon Him to make clear how He's working through you. Um, and seek your highest self, seek to remember, seek to love your Lord with all your being. Seek that the Lord intercedes between you and your heart, so that He inclines your heart towards truth, so that He makes you see with eyes that are true and hear with ears that are true, and to understand and to believe only in the truth. So I'll look at these verses from the Quran. It says in Surah Yunus, it's a 10th chapter, and mention the day when we will gather them all together. Then we will say to those who associated others with Allah, remain in your place, you and your partners. Then we will separate them, and their partners will say, you did not use to worship us. And sufficient is Allah for us between us and you that we were unaware of your worship. There that day every soul will be put on trial, will be put to trial for what it did previously, and they will be returned to Allah, the true master, and lost from them is whatever they used to invent. Say, who provides for you from the heaven and the earth? Or who controls hearing and sight? And who brings the living out of the dead and brings the dead out of the living? And who arranges every matter? They will say, Allah. So say, then will you not fear him? For that is Allah, your Lord, the truth, your true Lord. And what can be beyond truth except error? So, how are you averted? Thus the word of your Lord has come into effect upon those who defiantly disobeyed, that they will not believe. Say, are there any of your partners, any who begins creation and then repeats it? Say Allah begins creation and then repeats it. So how are you deluded? Say, are there any of your partners, any who guides to the truth? Say, Allah guides to the truth. So is he who guides to the truth more worthy to be followed, or he who guides not unless he is guided? Then what is wrong with you? How do you judge? And most of them follow not except assumption. And indeed, assumption avails not against the truth. So for me, it's like people think they know Islam. Allah basically means the God. So whenever you say Allah, you are saying the God. And people can say what they want about Islam, but I believe Islam is the religion that is free of all those errors, because whenever we invoke Allah, we call him by names that can be true. We don't call him by John or Jack or Jill. You know, we say the Lord, we say the Most High, we say the ever living, we say the sustainer of all existence, we say the merciful, we say the forgiving. So these are attributes that you can say there is no error in it. It relates to God, the bestower, the provider, things like that. So, and we call upon the God, the Lord who created the heavens and the earth, who sent all the prophets, who sent the books, the Torah, the gospel, the Psalms, and the Quran, who sent the prophets to preach to the people, who sent the messengers. So basically, Allah, and when I was talking about the repentance, I was telling you about having light. So you can only be guided towards the light you're giving. You cannot see the whole picture unless the Lord wills. So you can only guide to what you're guided to, right? Whereas Allah guides to the truth. He has knowledge of all things. So he is the most worthy of to follow. So for me, I would say seek your Lord. Call upon your Lord to reveal the truth to you and to incline your heart towards the truth. Because many of your books may have been changed. How would you know? So just call upon your Lord. You can read here and there and you can say, this makes more sense. I can call upon the most merciful. I can call upon the exalted. I can call upon the most high. I can call upon the ever living one who created everything, who sustains all existence. What can be, where can there be error in that? You know? So I think this is a good point to stop. Whatever I may have forgotten, I think I've said enough in terms of, you know, interpretation and some of the ways the Lord may work. So even if I have forgotten something, if it's going to benefit someone, maybe what I have so right now would be beneficial anyway. So I hope there was something to this. Um, Peace be upon you, folks.